Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Good. I got tired today. I had to swim. I had to swim over here again.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
You know, what good does it do to complain about the weather when we can't have a whole lot to do with it? The Russians are doing it.
That's right.
The Russians are messing up our
Putin
weather.
is weaponizing the weather.
Yeah. But anyway, we have a few things to talk about. People create things when things get boring. Oh, nothing much going in the news. And sometimes I work on a theory that when there's something that concentrates people, you know, like Ukraine or the Middle East, sometimes things occur when they're really covering up things and hiding what they're really doing, and everything is a prop. So, but yesterday there were some hearings, and Kimberly Cheatle was there, and she didn't impress me.
No, she was grilled though. Yeah.
She didn't impress me, and you know, she's part of it. You can't help but think that because she didn't come across that she was giving any information, and she should have it. And you know, looks like she's going to be out, and that's good, but. It's lousy on what happened there, and everybody's going to find out what's going to happen, who's going to score the points. So that's what will be going on, and she, you know, must not have felt good about her hearings because she said she would leave, but you know, when this first happened, my first thoughts are, you know, because I've been so embedded with personal and sort of studying, you know, the assassinations of the 1960s. And as soon as I see this stuff, I said, who was in? Is this you know? Is this one guy shooting him? And I usually, just because of the history that so many of us has witnessed, I come across and say, I wonder who's you know, who's involved. And most of the time they use an organization where there's generally a lot of respect for the hard workers, people like FBI agents. Which is changing and which won't hurt anything if people assume other things. But it's usually a few people. It didn't take every CIA agent to know what was going on with Kennedy, but it took a few well-placed, even ex-CIA agents, you know, like Alan Dulles, they're involved in it. So my first question that came to my mind was, you know, who's involved in this and what's going on, and you know, the immediate 24 hours. It can be that's when they set the impression on millions of people, and that's the way they did with Oswald. So right now, this crazy kid did it, and that was it. But I would say that there's some members of Congress and some Republicans that are starting to, and Democrats, matter of fact. The Democrats didn't treat Cheatle easily, and that's a good sign that is something is happening, or they finally decide, you know, our charade, it's been going on too long, and it's the charade that happens, and then it's the cover up, and this is going to go on. And I think the first thing I wrote afterwards, this might be a long time if we ever find out exactly what happened. Yeah.
So the hearings were yesterday, as you say. And on the one hand, it was kind of the usual dog and pony show where they bluster and they use some bad language. I got hammered on X because I said, you know, I'm old enough to remember when in the House you didn't use that kind of language in a hearing, and everyone said, well, this is war. You know, it really upsets me some of the words that they used, and I'm not old-fashioned in that way, but. But anyway, so there was points. Now, there were a couple of pertinent questions that she refused to answer. She seemed irritated, angry, frustrated, uncooperative. And I don't understand if it were me, why don't you just quit before the hearing and just say, look, I already quit, I'm out of here. I'm not going to sit here and be pummeled like this. But so right after the hearing, you put up this first clip. After the hearing, it was, and you're right, AOC, she said she's got to go, Cheatle's got to go. So anyway, right after the hearing, she resigned. She said, I'm out of here. So that sort of closes that chapter in a way, but does it, as you just said. you know, the one thing that you mentioned to me before the show was this kind of, you didn't say this exact word, but I wonder if this is kind of the high watermark for DEI.
Yeah,
She was very into it. And in fact, let's play this clip, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen it. Let's play 30 seconds of that clip I sent, because she's explicitly talking about, you want to put on your earpiece,
okay, got it here
before they start. This is from a while ago, but it tells a lot about where she was coming from when she took over the Secret Service.
To expand hiring, they're aiming to have 30% women recruits by 2030, and even allowed YouTube influencer Michelle Carre to train with agents.
But I'm very conscious as I sit in this chair now of making sure that we need to attract diverse candidates and ensure that we are developing and giving opportunities to everybody in our workforce, and particularly women.
That workforce will be pivotal for the 2024 campaign season, which for the first time.
So yeah, this happened obviously before the assassination attempt.
This is a affirmative action gone nuts.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't be against it, because then you're a really bad person.
Yeah.
You know, if you say that merit is something you should at least consider.
Yeah.
But no, that you're excluded sometimes because that you tend to outshine the rest of them. But you know, this DEI, and I look at this as maybe one of the good marks here that people are questioning it. But DEI as well as the ESG thing, when you put that all together, it really epitomizes, you know, the soft approach to total authoritarianism, and it's psychological warfare, and they always use it to put a guilt trip on you if you're not for it. You know, if you're against DEI, and so many people in industry, instead of arguing the case of a moral aspect of how the market works and sound money works, they just roll over and they do it, and they pretend. And I think some of them believe it, but I think most of them say, this is what I have to do. This is in the interest of the country and getting along. And in a way, some of that stuff actually helped their financial pages because you were excluded. You know, you were if you didn't endorse all this, then they would boycott you and try to boycott and hurt your business. So people need to wake up. There was awakening, I think, during COVID, where people changed their mind. But there's some real tragic stories coming out with COVID continuously. You know, how many people have continued to suffer. But you know, have you ever noticed that you'll read a story, and this is pure speculation, there'll be a story of a 21-year-old football player that died suddenly, which happens even without COVID, but the numbers of that type of a death has gone up, but they never mention whether or not he had shots or anything like that. So it's a shame.
Well, I mean, the real problem with this DEI and all of this, the hiring for quotas. I mean, of course, if it's based on merit, it should be open to anyone, obviously. But it raises these suspicions where you wonder if this person, and it's very unfair to people who have made it on merit, because you know, there's always a suspicion. Well, maybe they were a special hire, you know, and this sort of thing.
Yeah, Walter Williams, a black economist that was a good libertarian and a good friend, and he was very blunt about this. He says all that thing that he had to struggle because people assumed he was a professor and well known and wrote books because somebody, you know, gave it to him. So they create another problem. There's always a reaction to it, which is negative when they pretend they can, you know, make sure that only the socially acceptable people. But this has affected the appointment of young people going to medical school. And there's been studies to show that if they got in under DEI, they're not doing as well as the others. But what about the exclusion of the others that would beat them out in the testing, the grades? And they even do it on the airlines. You know, well, we have to have a balance on the pilot. We can't And this is, you know, a bad way to do it. And the meritocracy is understood, but people are intimidated easily, and I'm amazed that the businessmen. But I think they concentrate on, even if it's just temporary for a year, this is junk, but I'm going to go through with it because the stock will be knocked down if they say, oh, he didn't participate. But that requires a cooperation from the media, in order to punish people that don't go along with these mandates.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, our good friend Jacob Hornberger had a good piece out today. We reprinted it at the Ron Paul Institute. I just wanted to read a couple of quick things from it because it goes along with a lot of what you're saying about how they're going to have a commission and this and that and the other. But if you put that next one up, it's a great article. Congressional incompetence in its Trump shooting investigation. He talks about how they had Cheatle before the committee. They're upset that she was unable to provide them with adequate explanations of what appears to be incompetence at best and willful blindness, conscious indifference, or complicity at worst on the part of the Secret Service. Now here is the interesting part. Now he says it's actually, maybe Cheatle's incompetent, but Congress is also incompetent. Go to this next one. He says, but if incompetence is the right explanation, it is matched by the incompetence of Congress in its supposed investigation of the shooting. After all, Cheatle wasn't even there. So anything she testifies is just based on what others have told her. He says, how is it supposed to get to the bottom of what happened? And go to the next one, and this is an interesting part. This is what they won't do. So if Congress really wants to determine what happened and why, it should subpoena every single Secret Service agent and every single police officer on duty. Take the sworn testimony of all of them. Don't let them sit inside the chamber and listen to what the others are saying. Then put all the testimony together and see if there are any contradictions, anomalies, etc. And I won't read the next one, but he says, but they're not going to do that because if it turns out that the worst case scenario is true, which is that there is some kind of maliciousness, that would suggest that the government, the deep state, is capable of doing these things. And that's what they don't want out. And when I read this, I was thinking of what you always say, because they don't want an investigation. If it really is this bad, they don't want anyone to know.
And that dawned on me early on because I was following it, and I can't, well, probably that report, the Kennedy Commission report, came out not too long after, because Johnson ordered the investigation within 24 hours. We got to get to the bottom of this. They did that. But if they do this, I remember when they came out and had their little press conference, and it might have been Ford who said this, but if not, somebody said it at the conference, and they said that you have to accept the fact that we'll never know all the details of that in our lifetime.
Wow.
Is it a lifetime over yet?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, because of the investigation, a lot has been learned.
Yeah.
I got to thinking, because, and there's still people who argue, one shot, one guy, that if you have several people, 2 or 3 shooting, maybe it's like the firing squad. Nobody knows who killed the guy. So that might be it. Maybe the shots were fired. Maybe somebody said, we don't know exactly which one did it, but we never have the names of these people, so therefore the people who suspect these things, they lose credibility on it. But the evidence is so overwhelming that there was a conspiracy. But the conspiracy comes from conspiring to kill somebody and then the conspiring to cover up, not the people who are always looking for fictitious explanations of why special individuals get assassinated.
Yeah. Well, the other thing we noticed is another crazy thing this morning, and it's also the Secret Service. They've come up with a solution to the dangers posed by Trump. Put up the next one. This is from our friends at Zero Hedge. Hilarious. I had to read this twice because I didn't believe it. Go to the next one, please. There we go. More agency weaponization. Secret Service tells Trump to stop holding outdoor rallies. Is that the Secret Service is turning near assassination lemons into deep state lemonade. Following its catastrophic failure to secure Donald Trump's July 13th rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, the Secret Service has come up with a fix that reeks of ulterior motives. the agencies advised the Trump campaign, stop holding large outdoor rallies altogether. No more rallies.
Right. I wonder if that falls into the category of what they did to Trump for more than 10 years, false accusation. And excuse me, it turns out that these charges made were the things that they were doing. They said, well, evil people do, and they're evil, and we do it this way, so we'll know how to get to it. But I have a little thesis that says that the most recent coup, there's always been attempts at coups and limiting the republic, and it's gradual and steady and erosion. But big things do happen, and I think 1963 and all the 60s was really, a coup that went on. And I think that this is a continuation of it. But one thing that we saw recently is there were the 21 individuals, all super spies, and all the people who were keeping us safe. They signed the letter that they said made the difference in the campaign. It said, everything that Hunter's saying, it's true. This is all the right thing. And now, just recently, they were refuted. They were all liars. All liars. And then they say that people who think about this and look for the truth, they write them off like if it's under some circumstance. Oh, he's a terrorist. But now they say he's a conspirator. He's a conspiracy nut.
Well, it's so crazy because as everyone knows, this is Trump's strength. These big, huge rallies, thousands and thousands of people. That's where he draws his energy, And so for the Secret Service to say, stop doing that, because no one's going to come see Kamala Harris, She's not going to have a stadium full of people listening to her cackle all the time. It's not going to happen. So Mike Benz, who I think worked in the Trump administration, he had a good tweet about this, if we can put that up. And I think he really captures the insanity of telling Trump to stop holding rallies. So he says, insanity. The Biden-Harris Department of Homeland Security is telling Biden-Harris's political opponent to vastly reduce the number of voters he can reach on the campaign trail. This is completely unprecedented in U.S. history. The government in power is effectively blocking its adversary from campaigning in person. Now, maybe that's a bit hyperbolic, but nevertheless, I think he's got a good point.
When you look at this, what the opposition to Trump has done is they've admitted that they are totally failing at what they pretend to do because they wanted to grab, and they believe they could grab the moral high ground when they do. Most of them, deep down in their heart, they knew about it, except they are nihilists and they don't believe there is such a thing as truth, so that's why they live with it. But this is, what have they done? They lied about him, and they tried to put him in jail, and they have been successful to a degree, but now it's all unwinding. I mean, it's a bit of irony on how rapidly this has reversed, because all of a sudden the king has no clothes. Look at what they've been doing, and I guess the one thing that I always want to be fair in my sharp criticism, but I'll tell you what to watch the enemies of Trump squirm now, it really is a pleasure to see, because they're squirming and they built a case. And the only danger of saying that is that mean that the Republicans are pure, and we know philosophically that we deal with because the Republicans can say we want lower taxes and we want this and lower inflation and we want less wars and all this, but that's the other thing that I believe strongly, that the big guys, they have control of the financial system, and they have control of what's going on here now, except every once in a while there's a burst of truth that comes out, and I think that verification is just wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the last thing we want to talk about, this has been a circus this past week. You had the assassination attempt. You had a coup against Biden, which I think that's what you have to call it. It's a coup against Biden. Then you have now the nominee is a person who no one has voted for president. Nobody has voted for to be the Democratic nominee. Not a single person has voted for. You have that craziness. And then all of a sudden what happens? Bibi rolls into town. He's into town in the middle of the most chaotic situation I can remember for a long time in Washington. Here comes Netanyahu in the middle of a bloody, bloody genocidal war. Put up this next clip, this from the BBC. Netanyahu is facing a day of rage in Washington, protesters say. A lot of people are furious. They're going to try to say it's just a bunch of Marxists, but a lot of people are furious. And he is going to give a speech today in Congress. But it's not going to be like it usually is, Dr. Paul, where everyone is jumping up and down and clapping, because if you go to the next one, there's going to be a lot of empty seats there. The list of Democrats saying they will not attend Netanyahu's speech today is growing. I'm told it could be up to 80. More on the counter, et cetera, et cetera. So up to 80 Democrats are going to sit this thing out.
Now, you know, the word coup under these current circumstances, the first time I heard it came from Daniel McAdams. He's the one that said, he's the one that said, there's a coup going on. They're taking over government. And it was additional to the bigger coups, too, of the taking over the judicial system and all the other things. But no, and then there's some people, a lot of people are using that word now. Kamala Harris, can you think of, but they're for democracy.
Yeah, they're for democracy.
They're for democracy. And you get to vote on which coup we're going to follow.
Yeah.
so it's fine. But you were talking about maybe some people might not go to the speech tomorrow, Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I had a sort of a quiet personal rule when I was there. I had no desire to go to those things because I especially when they give talks and speeches, you know, on the House floor. And I think that was too much recognition of globalism, you know. So I never liked it. But I didn't feel like I was a boycotter because nobody knew and nobody cared. But philosophically, I couldn't stand it, you know, the whole idea of, in order to be polite and you're there, no matter who's speaking, you know, I think they said, didn't Castro speak before the Congress one time and everybody had to cheer? They did there, but you're supposed to be prompted to be polite and cheer them on. But now it's good that it's happening, but I think it should be. You know, there's a lot of politic in what they're doing. They're not boycotting it for our reasons. That it's not worth listening to.
Yeah, I mean, you were an equal opportunity boycotter. It wasn't any beef against Bibi or anyone. It's just you don't want to have any of them in there. That's the right approach. Well, you know, Speaker Johnson says if anyone gets out of line when Bibi's speaking, they're going to be arrested. So much for free debate on there.
That would violate the principles of civil liberties.
It seems like it would.
And even against congressmen.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Well, someone who's going to sit it out. Now you can skip that next clip and go to the Thomas Massie tweet. Someone who's going to skip it out is going to be Thomas Massie today, who's taking a lot of bold stance, and he makes an explanation which makes perfect sense. He says, today Congress will undertake political theater on behalf of the State Department. The purpose of having Netanyahu address Congress is to bolster his political standing in Israel and to quell international opposition to his war. I don't feel like being a prop, so I won't be attending. To which AIPAC, now remember, they tried to kick him out, they tried to nuke him, he won. Well, they aren't happy, so they responded to this. Go to the next clip, and they said, once again, Thomas Massie is standing with AOC and Bernie Sanders against our ally, Israel. To which Thomas Massie had another zinger. He said, call me anything you want. I still won't be attending your war rally. So, hats off to Thomas.
We know this guy, don't we?
We know this guy.
Thomas guy.
Yeah.
So
great response.
Yeah. Well, I can't figure out what they're going to be saying because they're obsessed with democracy, and of course, in the good sense of democracy, they're not for it. You know, if they really wanted, you know, democracy, they would want the free market, you know, because the only way that I see democracy working is allowing people to vote every time they spend $1.
Yeah.
And how they spend it and what they do. And if it's if they're not treated well and they don't get a good product, they have their own little boycotts, and it catches on, and people don't spend their money there. So that's a democratic way of doing it, rather than on price controls. You know, there was something else just recently it came up with having price controls on. Well, when you talk about tariffs and all that, most of that is all price controls protecting certain individuals. And I think about that problem happened in the early Texas history when oil was coming in, and they created a thing called, I don't know how they got the name, but it was the Railroad Commission. And maybe they were calling the oil, but the Railroad Commission, even up to this day, I imagine it's still that way, that they have a lot to say about interfering in the price of oil, because oil was becoming plentiful. Oh, they're not getting a full price for it. So I thought, well, you know, they never stop. Regulate the prices.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to close out by putting up something I haven't in a while. Go to that last clip, please. A reminder of the Liberty Platform Ron Paul Institute Conference, August 31st in Dulles, Virginia, near the Dulles Airport at the Hilton out there. It's going to be a great conference. We've got 8 announced speakers, so it's going to be a full day of interesting discussion. Meet a lot of great people. I will put a link in the description where you can get your tickets. Get them right away because they're going fast. And we look forward to seeing you next month. Dr. Paul?
Very good. You know, we talk about the chaos that has been created and these things going on now with attempted assassination. It contributes to chaos. Now, the cultural Marxists, you know, really believe in it, because they believe that chaos should bring the government down and all of the social fabric, the good especially, so that they can rebuild it in some socialist idealism. So that they want to do that, but the chaos is very real. And it's inevitable. It is a bipartisan thing, and that is the bad policy that's made. You know, the inflationism, the international warism that we put up with, the lack of respect for civil liberties in the true sense of the word. And this is the chaos that's coming, and we're in the midst of. But I think most of it comes, even if some is on purpose, the Marxists are organized to definitely do it on purpose, but other people might be a little bit more motivated to try to help people, which never fails. I mean, our foreign policy, our domestic policy, and our welfareism, and our DEAs and ESGs, and they pretend that is supposed to help, but it leads to chaos. And but you can't excuse them because they had good intentions, because good intentions aren't acceptable. You have to have good ideas and decent ideas, and they have to be based on moral principles. And one moral principle they tend to ignore, and that is the principle of property. Property. You are for property? Yeah, I'm for people keeping what they earn. and they say, oh, you're just a miser, and they make it very negative. But I think that you know, the chaos comes from bad policy. Bad policy comes from the authoritarians. Both parties share it, and one party absolutely a lot more than the other, but authoritarianism means the absence of liberty, and that is the case, and most of the time it comes from the giving up of the whole principle of a free market system, and the acceptance of nihilism. Say, you guys waste so much time. You're talking about this every week, but don't you know there is no truth out there? So why do you do this? Well, we have our own personal reasons for doing it, and I think a lot of you understand exactly the reason why we talk about liberty. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.